Hello, guys, and welcome back to this new episode. Today, we are going to discuss how sensible it is to believe in God. So, let's start off with the first analogy. So, let's assume that we find ourselves in a stranded island and we're walking on the beach. And here we see a watch. Now we see a watch, and the watch has been made to calculate time, right? But also, when we see the watch, we recognize the watch as such. In other words, the analogy goes something like this. There is a purpose why the watch has been made, that is to calculate the time. But there is also an innate purpose in the eye that can recognize the watch, right? Eyes are done with the specific purpose or well created with the specific purpose of seeing, right? And so if we take into consideration this analogy and we go like, this is a true analogy, then we also have to admit that the creator of the watch is man, whereas the creator of the eye is eventually God, because basically the eye belongs to, or eyes belong to, the human body, and as such, the creator of the human body is God. Now, of course, this is an analogy that is true for the believers, for who have beliefs in God, right? But it is also true that even if we imagine that a man has been created by another man, specifically through procreation, we would go ad infinitum, right? And we have to postulate, or this is what philosophers have done, they have postulated the existence of God. This is an argument by Haley, and it is known as the design argument. This is nothing else but the teleological argument. Teleological argument that says that everything has to have a purpose, right? Now, to this argument, there is one main objection, and that is the Darwinian evolution, right? And so the idea that we are what we are because of a slow evolution that has led us to this place. It's a slow evolution that has been created through mutations, and mutations that have occurred just because basically we had to adapt to the circumstances and to the surroundings, and so to our environment. And so, according to the idea of the survival of the fittest, we have the human eye, so to speak. Now, through the evolution, our chains of amino acids has evolved as well. We have evolved and we have mutated. Some of these mutations have been disadvantageous, and many others advantageous for the species and for the survival of the species, right? However, there is a point. Who has created the DNA? And so this is a important question, because it goes back to the argument ad infinitum, as it is called in Latin and as it is called in philosophical terms. That is, who has created, the last thing we can imagine, who has created the DNA, right? And it's easy to assume for believers and non-believers that there is not a proper explanation to this, right? In other words, that the creator of the DNA has been God. Why is then so easy to imagine a creator of all creation? Simply because it is easy to assume not only a bigger creator that has created everything, but also, that whatever we had in terms of creation has been done for us, to serve a purpose for us, right? So, in other words, what we're trying to say here is that we can name it God, or we can leave it as a mystery that cannot be solved, like an unsolvable mystery. But the idea behind all of this is that basically, we have been offered certain conditions that were the necessary prerequisite for our own existence. In other words, if the force of gravity had been different, then the entire universe would have not existed. It would have existed maybe for 1 or 2 seconds, but then it would have collapsed, right? And so there is this argument that everything has been created for us to allow our own existence. On the other side, though, there is this argument of the lottery, right? The so-called the lottery argument, right? Which says what? Let's say I put like a certain amount of money at disposal for everybody who wins the lottery. Now, only one person among the ones who are going to buy, let's say, the ticket, are going to win, or one person is going to win that prize, right? And what that means also inevitably is that when we say that everything has been created for us, that might not be completely true, in the sense that we might have just simply adapted to circumstances, or we might have been what we are because we were the one winning the lottery among the many possibilities we were given, or more precisely we were given to be, right? Because it's matter of like we were the ones that were suitable for this sort of environment. Now, to be completely fair, there are many objections, many objections to the existence of God, and a lot of them have to do somehow with the concept and with the presence of evil on earth. In other words, God is described as omniscient, omnipotent, and benevolent, right? And if we omit something that we have to do, if we omit the presence of evil on earth, then we have to say either that he didn't know that he was gonna create evil, and that of course is diminishing in relation to the omniscience of God. So we cannot say that he didn't know, but that he's omniscient. Secondly, we have to say that at this point is not omnipotent because it cannot prohibit evil on earth, because a good God, at least the good God that is described in the New Testament, is a piety God, right? So somebody full of mercy, is a merciful God, and so his omnipotence conflicts with the presence of evil, and that contradicts his own benevolence, right? There are other suggestions here that will say that evil can be interpreted as a form of punishment, something that can be traced back to the Old Testament. There's another objection that has been moved, that is of free will, meaning, in other words, that God has given us free will, and here we have to wonder if we really did need or did want free will, because it's great to have liberty, but then liberty and freedom has a cost, and the cost is huge here. And then number three, we also have to admit that basically what we're saying here is that we might not simply understand the distribution of evil, in the sense that we just don't understand the distribution of evil because that follows or that falls under God's plans, and God's plans are not understandable by human beings, right? But then, if we say that, it's like saying that there are fairies at night that operate and they do fix things in our garden, but then the fairies are invisible, and also the work is basically invisible. And so we could apply Occam's razor in saying that basically, entia non sunt multiplicanda sine necessitate, which is a Latin sentence to say that admitting that something exists when we cannot actually prove, number one, and two, be fully cognizant of its work, then it's like saying there are multiple invisible things that operate in this world that we cannot account for. In other words, we're going to multiply ends or entities, right? Without having the necessity logically to do so. And on the other hand, if we want to be completely thorough, which we do want to be, we also have to acknowledge a couple of things. For instance, that an ancient Greek has never perceived God to be the Christian God in the same aspect, right? Nor an Hindu has believed ever in the Christian concept of God, right? And just um, in the Greek version, which would be Zeus or any other god, any other god that the ancient Greek believed in. And therefore, we are left with the question: does God exist, and is that sensible to believe in God? And basically, to answer this question, we go back to square one and we go back to what Pascal said. Blaise Pascal, philosopher of the 16th, 17th century, he was saying that in the end, believing in God is like a bet, right? And it's better to believe in God than not believing in God, right? And so this is quite important for us because it's a bet and it's a personal choice. What is it that we want to believe and why we want to believe in God? And so, if the question at the end boils down to actually, is that sensible in front of pain, death, misery, solitude, and many other factors of human life? If the question is that sensible to believe in God, then that boils down to like a personal choice. And then what we're left with is one more question, which is believing in God comparable or on the same level, epistemological, but also and most of all in terms of its consequences? Is that on the same level in of believing in the fact that Elvis Presley, for instance, never died, that he actually pretended to be dead, but didn't really die and is somewhere in some remote island, maybe enjoying his life. And of course, the question seems to be answered negatively, in a sense that our answer immediately would be no, because whether you believe it or not, the belief has powerful consequences. Whatever we believe is somewhat realized in this life, right? And so, if we believe in God, it's not quite the same as believing in Elvis Presley's being alive or being still alive. But I will leave the final question to you. What do you guys think is sensible to believe in God? Please let me know your comments. Let me know your thoughts. Comment below. Subscribe to the channel if you like this channel. If you like this video, leave a like and also hit the notification bell so that you can guys receive all our updates. Now, naturally, we're gonna talk some more next time with a new episode. For this time, that is all. Bye bye.